or 5. At that time, it was a larger board. But it's important that everybody on our board has an opportunity to get an up or down vote on things that they are passionate about. That's why I'm thankful for that policy, and I'm thankful that Ms. Fay has brought that forward, and I think Ms. Fay deserves an up or down vote on the board on the policy that she and 2 other board members, and I didn't send the email because my email was down, and I apologize to everybody. We had password problems. Mr. Ray can confirm that. So I do think there should be an up or down vote on that issue, and I think staff should bring that back for an up or down vote, and I think we should move forward. I do think, along with any policy, I think we take the steps to get feedback from staff and feedback from students, but I think overall there has been a lot of feedback, but I think we do need an up or down vote and move forward on these issues so we can continue to do the great work. I do commend those individuals who stood up and told their stories, told their realities. It takes a lot of courage. But it is often weird when I hear people reference some of the things they referenced, and it takes me back to when I was growing up as a mixed individual, and I was an abomination, and I was those things. We all have different stories, but at the end of the day, every kid should have a safe learning environment. And how we get there, we may differ, but the reality is every kid, every student should have a safe learning environment, and that's what I'm about. We can go through 2 hours of debate, 2 hours of public comment. I'm always going to vote to extend it. If you drove down here, you should be able to be heard. That's my belief. But at the end of the day, it's about every student having a safe learning environment. And I'm not going to stop until we get that. And it's the same thing as every student should have the opportunity to have the tools to be successful in life. And I'm not going to stop until every student has the opportunity to know how to read, to know how to do math, and to have a safe learning environment. To me, those all go hand in hand. And so, Ms. Fay, you have my support on bringing back an up or down vote. Obviously, the lawyer in me tells me I have to look at the policy and make sure I agree with it and nitpick it. But I think every board member, we are elected, should be able to have policies introduced and have an up or down vote by this board and by this public. I think it's our duty, and I think anything short of that stops the ability for us to do our job. So I commend Ms. Fay for pushing Mr. Vargas, Mr. Snow. That's all I want to say. I think the process matters. Well, not pushing it, but make sure that it's on the agenda for us to have a conversation. I think, and it goes back, and I'll just end with this. It goes back to when we were on the previous board and some of the struggles of just getting things on the agenda. I think it's important, and I'm glad this board is not operating that way, and I'm glad this board is transparent in a sense of saying if board members want something on the agenda, we should be able to have a conversation about it. I think that's important for the process.
Okay. Ms. Underwood.
So I'm really glad that we voted to extend public comment because I really appreciated the feedback from our transgender community that we heard from. The things that that are implied that we're doing in our schools really bugs me sometimes. I heard things like, you know, things about kids mutilating their bodies, things about you know, kids being asked to dress in a certain way. Of course, we're not doing any of that within our schools, but we're also not here to pass judgment in any way. And I feel like that's what some members of the community are asking us to do. And we simply can't do that as a public school community and as public school board. So what I heard, I was listening really hard, especially to the students that we had present. What I heard from them is that they want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel safe. They want to feel like they are in an inclusive environment when they go to school. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, how do we do that as a board? I go back to the human growth and development curriculum that we just passed, where there are specific things that talk about self-esteem and the hope and growth mindset. And we talk about sexual orientation and gender identification and how we need to be accepting of everyone. I'm not necessarily against hearing about a more detailed policy for staff and student use of bathroom and locker rooms. I think we need to be really thoughtful about the process, though. I agree with Mr. Wayne. I think we need to hear from students. I don't think that it's just about bathrooms, though. That's the only thing for me. I don't want to focus on that and forget the other stuff, because I think it's the things that are going to address what the issues are that our transgender students, from what I'm hearing they're experiencing, the things that are going to address that and create a more inclusive environment is just our staff in the schools, and making sure that kids aren't being bullied and fostering that sense of inclusiveness, which I think they're already doing. But I think with passing things like our human growth and development curriculum, we're helping to kind of encourage that and set new guidance for that. I have a few other things I want to say. I was going to say at the beginning and I forgot. There is also a policy about the there's an item on the agenda about the anti-discrimination policy that's later on, and I have some comments during that discussion as well. But that's kind of my thoughts, at least on this topic.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vargas.
Microphone's very far. I'm going to go a little closer to it. So I want to thank everyone for their comments. And I echo what a lot of people also shared. Public comments pretty much our only opportunity for us to hear people that both have the time and access to come here, but also people that care very deeply about the issue. I think it's one of our opportunities to get some input from the community, along with many other mechanisms. And I'm glad that we extend it. I'll always vote to extend it, especially for people that are coming from afar and are making the time. My name is on that list. I think one of the reasons my name was on the list is when I emailed it, I was thinking along the same lines that everybody else was. Our job as a public school board is to ensure the safety of every single one of our students and to create a welcoming and inclusive environment where they can learn and thrive. It seems like a very simple statement, but it's the truth. I think too often we get mired up in our personal beliefs, which is true, and we have our ideologies. But at the end of the day, when I'm listening to students talk about the fears and prejudices that they're facing because of a gender identity or gender expression, I can't turn a blind eye. We have to listen. I think part of our job as a school board is to also be pragmatic and learn and be willing to engage in uncomfortable conversations. I say the word uncomfortable because we're put in a position where we have to be engaged in what's happening across the country and ensure that we're creating sound policy that creates safety, and also creates safety not just in terms of public safety, but in terms of the identities that the people bring to our school district. I'm fully in support in what Ms. Fay is asking. I think we need to investigate and do our due diligence around how can we create a more safe and welcoming environment in regards to a very simple question, which is, which bathroom do I use? I think in terms along the lines of what others are saying, that we probably need more stakeholder engagement. This means maybe having some more conversations with different groups. And I want to task our district with doing that and coming up with some policy that begins to answer that question for the different groups that are being affected by it, and specifically the transgender youth in our school district. I think it's our duty. And I'm not saying this because of the politics that people believe it's about or what's happening across the country. I'm saying that because we heard students share that today. So for those that think this is about some other ulterior motive, I asked them to listen to the public comment and that we had students that shared prejudice and hate that had been directed towards them, and that makes me believe that we are not where we need to be. And so as a public school board entity that's trying to create sound policy, our job is to have uncomfortable conversations that create a safe, welcoming environment for our students. I'm happy we have this conversation now and it won't end because we need to continue to be open and transparent with the community. I'm happy that the board members pretty resoundingly are focusing on this safety aspect and a welcoming environment because that's the truth. I am proud to be part of this board because that's what we're operating underneath. I'm going to read one thing. This is actually from the NEA, the National Education Association, in partnership with several other organizations, put out basically a guide to how we engage in conversations around policies, best practices regarding transgender youth. And one of the statements they state is, school is the place where our children should be exploring ideas and discovering new skills. No child should be prevented from pursuing their passions simply based on others' perceptions of their gender. I state this, and I hope people listen to it. There are individuals in our communities, in our schools, that do not feel safe enough to learn. Our job as a public school district is to ensure everyone has a safe environment to learn, no matter what judgment somebody puts upon them. And that is what I'm committed to do, and I'm very glad to have other board members that are also committed to doing that. Thank you very much.
Ms. Marican.
We're going to try. So I apologize. I'm starting to lose my voice. First off, I'm going to save most of my remarks for later because most of them pertain to the non-discrimination policy. But I did want to say that I do agree with Mrs. Fay, and I would like our administration to draft a policy and bring it back to our board so we can start the process that we go through with every policy of discussing with the board, making changes if needed, getting feedback from stakeholder groups so that we can move forward. I wanted to address a couple of things that I had heard during public comment, though. One of them was that there's an agenda behind this, or that there are groups pushing us to do this. And I can honestly say I have not had any outside group contact me saying, you guys need to do this. If anyone else on the board has and wants to speak up and say that, feel free. But I know for me personally, I have not had a single women's fund, specific people, other groups in Omaha say, you must do this. So that's just not true. And I wanted to echo what we've been saying about this. It's a safety issue. And there's a great difference. And I trust our teachers because I know in elementary schools, you have the teachers standing right there outside the bathroom, counting kids in, counting kids out, to make sure kids aren't hiding in there. Nobody's just messing around. They're going in, coming back out, and getting back in line to go to class. So they're not wasting their instructional time, to quote some teachers. And in high school, a lot of times you have teachers that rotate duties throughout the building, and they're assigned a bathroom duty to verify kids aren't going in the bathroom, smoking, hanging out. They're going in, coming out, going to class. I really trust our teachers to know the difference between a student who identifies as transgender, who's going into the bathroom, and a student that just says, well, I want to use that bathroom today. There's a difference between those two things. There's a difference between a person who is transgender and wants to use the restroom and a person who puts on clothes they don't normally wear and goes into a bathroom with malintent to do wrong. There's a distinct difference. And even not having a policy is not going to change that. Having the policy is not going to change it. If there's people who have malintent and want to do bad things, they're going to do that. And that's why we have to be aware and stop that and come up with ways to keep that from happening.
Mr. Scanlon.
I'd ask that in-house legal counsel and outside legal counsel come up to the podium, please. I have a few questions. I guess a lot of this, I mean, obviously, people are very passionate about it, but there is the legal aspect that is ongoing in our nation, and I guess if you guys could give us what is legally going on, because I think we have two different topics here. We have the non-discrimination policy, adding certain terms to that policy, and then separate, we have the transgender staff and student use of bathrooms and locker rooms. Could you let us know legally how each one of those would affect the other, if we, as we have the first reading for policy 1200 later on today, how that would affect the bathroom use, and if you could go into some legal explanation.
Well, first of all, Mrs. Fay was correct in her assertion that we have the ability to go beyond what the law requires, and the board has in its current policy already done that with a couple of the things that are outlined in the non-discrimination policy. The separate policy is one that would be in compliance with the recommendations by the Department of Justice. They are advisory recommendations, although the Department of Justice and the Office of Civil Rights does tend to pursue those as though their opinions are the law, and there will be a lot of litigation to sort that out. So the discrimination policy that's presented to you this evening is one that's certainly within your right to go ahead and do that without any kind of legal ramifications. That one has really no impact from a practical standpoint on the bathroom issues, the locker room issues, all of those kinds of things. If you wanted to have a policy that affects those kind of specific items, you would follow Mrs. Fay's recommendation and have a policy drafted consistent with what we've seen in other school districts that outlines each of the specific areas that you would want to address.
In addition to Mr. Kramer's comments, I would say that a policy adds an additional legal tool that could be used on both sides. So if someone would say that the district did discriminate against them and there was a specific policy and it had specific items listed in that policy, it's an evidence to say that that is something that this is the district's practice. This is what the district holds out to be true. And it can be used in a legal proceeding as whether or not you did do that or you didn't do that, you followed your policy or you did not follow your policy. So it provides an additional evidentiary tool in legal proceedings as well.
With the Supreme Court ruling, with the stay for Virginia, could you inform the board and the public what that school board in Virginia passed, or what the specifics were to that?
So this is what I recall, and correct me if I'm incorrect. The policy that there was a transgender student at Virginia. The school board decided to only allow, I believe, birth gender, did not allow the student to use the restroom. The student sued the school district, worked up through the district court to the Fourth Circuit. The Fourth Circuit held that it was discriminatory practice, that they found that the student, in an en banc hearing, that the student should have been allowed to use the restroom that he or she identifies with. Then the Supreme Court, they petitioned the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court issues a stay. The reason the Supreme Court issued a stay, it was a
5-3.
5-3.
With
It
one
was
judge.
It was 5-3 with one judge simply saying that he believes because the status quo, the school hadn't the student hadn't come back to school that year and implemented the policy, they hadn't implemented the gender identity policy, that they put a stay on that proceedings until the Supreme Court could hear those arguments. If the Supreme Court, let's say, goes 4-4,
I don't think they've decided whether or not they're going to hear it. I
That's
think
right. They
that's,
have not
that's
did not-
incorrect.
Okay, I appreciate that. No, you're correct on
It
that.
was,
They
it
did
was to
not.
give the school district time to
file.
file an
Brief.
appeal.
Yes, that's correct. You're right.
And in fact, it would have been a 4-4 to not grant the stay, but one of the judges who, in a somewhat unusual move, telegraphed that they weren't inclined to support the substance of the appeal, but they felt that it was necessary from a procedural standpoint to give the school district the time to be able to appeal it. So,
And if there is a 4-4 decision, just for your purposes, at the court, they do actually hear that decision and it goes 4-4, it will uphold whatever the lower court's ruling is, which is the Fourth Circuit's upholding, use the bathroom that you identify with. So that would be the ruling if they would go 4-4 and were petitioned.
and in the meantime, the Fourth Circuit ruling does not apply to, I mean, we're in the Eighth Circuit. It doesn't have the force of law in the Eighth Circuit.
So if we went through everything and a policy was drafted and approved, would that open us up to legal possible lawsuits?
Let me add to that. Would it open us up to a lawsuit any more or less than not having a policy?
As someone who makes money off of lawsuits, I would tell you that the Department of Justice's perspective is probably that you're more likely to be a target if you don't have it. That's what happened they had a policy essentially that was adopted that said you have to use the gender of your birth identity, for the restroom of the gender of your birth identity on your birth certificate. That prompted the Department of Justice to sue them. So we have a tendency to enjoy the scrutiny of the Office of Civil Rights, perhaps more than some of the school districts around Nebraska. And so I think you've got risk both ways. Although if you've adopted a policy, I would say you're less likely to have a policy consistent with what Mrs. Fay proposed this evening. You're less likely to have scrutiny from the Department of Justice or the Office of Civil Rights because the policy was consistent with what their advisory dear colleague letter said.
And just don't hold me accountable for legal fees either way. Just kidding.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I do want to add that I know we had a lot of folks speak today, and some spoke on very personal issues, and we're passionate about that, and so I certainly respect those individuals who have had sexual assault situations or who've been discriminated against, and I want to acknowledge that. I do take a difference with safety and a policy being two separate things, because I think there are safety issues in our restrooms, and I know, I've personally been aware of that, and so I think that there's opportunity for us to work on safety issues in our restrooms. So I guess I have the question of, we've seen districts around the country have gender neutral, where, as Ms. Williams said, floor-to-ceiling stalls, common wash areas outside of those. I know my husband was just on vacation and said he was washing his hands and he realized, oh gosh, I'm standing next to a woman. Did I walk into the wrong restroom? And then he realized, no, these are just gender-neutral restrooms, and there's a common wash area. It was very safe, and no one was concerned in that space. So I know that there are school districts who have moved in that direction, and I guess the one thing I would ask, and I'm not sure how it works for some of our students, but we have a very high population of refugee students. And over vacation this last week and a half when I was gone, I actually finished reading the book, I Am Malala. And one of the, and I don't know how many people have read that, but one of the chapters in there, she discussed when she's in England having surgery, and the nurses were struggling with what to do with her to occupy her time, had gotten her some movies. And in some of those movies, there were males in swimsuits and different things, and it completely shocked her and sent her into stress because that was culturally and religiously something that wasn't acceptable in the Muslim religion. And so I guess I would just ask if there's an opportunity for us to have some gender-specific and some gender-neutral spaces, if that's something we could consider in a policy. I recognize that it's not exactly what you're asking for, but I also think about religious and cultural differences, and we have such a high population of refugee students. We have a number of students who I've been contacted by a lot of people for religious purposes as well. And so just wonder if we could think about, because I really do think the safety piece
Well, let
ties
me
to the whole
address
thing.
that.
I mean, I think there is a lot of safety
Actually,
perspective.
that's not what I said at all. And when I read,
Okay,
when
so
I
I'm
read
sorry.
some sample policy
Okay.
from California, it actually addresses exactly what you're talking about. And that's just it. And to Ms. Underwood's point, we don't have to make this up. There is best practice out there. There's school districts out there already who've done this and who have, like when you look at the GLSEN sample policy, it covers everything from pronouns to dress codes to facility use. I mean, this is not something we have to invent here in the district. So would ask that, because it sounds like that there is support for the staff to come back with some policy for us to discuss, that they look at it and, look at what best practice, look what's working around the country. I didn't ask for any specific policy language, so don't ascribe that to me, please. And, the broader and more comprehensive we can make it to address other issues, then, I'm all for that, because we didn't even talk about pronoun use. I appreciated hearing from some of our speakers today who identified, their preferred pronouns when they came up to the lectern.
Thank you for clarifying that. So I guess I think what we're hearing is that I think the majority of the board has said they would like staff to work on policy, taking a look at best practices. I think I also heard engagement. So engagement of, and I see research back there, so I know they do a great job with surveys and input, that we could reach out specifically to our students, our staff, and our families, having an understanding of what some of their concerns are, because obviously families, just like me, have students who understand safety issues in restrooms very personally. And I think that is an issue to address, and I think that it's important that we take a look at the safety piece in combination with this policy. I understand the broader language piece as well, and I think it was good that we heard from a student today who said that staff members certainly made that student feel welcome, and that made a huge difference for that student in school, and it sounded like that was a significant aspect for the student. I also think we heard that there's been a more positive tone set for many of our LGBT students regarding starting the school year. But for me, safety is a big issue, and I also think you have to respect cultural and religious differences in our student population as well as we move forward with that and be respectful. Mr. Snow?
I would suggest that something, whether they're Muslim, there's a huge, large Somalian population here in Omaha. Minneapolis has, I think, the largest Somalian population, and they changed their transgender policy, I think, included bathrooms and locker rooms in 2015. So I think even to a certain extent, looking at some of those school districts that have larger populations, how they dealt with those communities, on rolling that out or talking to the community to fully understand, going back to your point, to make sure that everyone is concerns are at least heard and understood. So
I think that's important, and I think it's also important that we engage our own community. And I know we heard from a number of Hispanic people as well today, so I think we just have to be really thoughtful as we move forward to make sure that we're completely respecting all the different folks that are here and not disregarding anyone. Mr. Wayne.
I agree with you, Mrs. Gotti. I think it's process matters, and so as we move forward, we have to have a clear communication plan on engagement and feedback, and I mean genuine feedback, and engage people and have that conversation again at the board table. But I think we need to have a clear process on how we're going to move forward before we start moving forward, so we're not repeating some of the mistakes we've made in the past.
So I guess Mr. Evans is feverishly, furiously, I don't know which, taking notes, and I think one of the other things that I know I had talked to Mr. Evans about was just engaging our communications director to take a look at communications plans that were done around the country, and whether it was gender neutral, gender specific, because I know there are districts that have gone to that, or other types of policies, how they went through that process, because I think that's important as well. So I think you have a lot of homework to do for this. Are there any other comments? All right. With that, we're going to move on to the superintendent's contract, and I will just call upon Mr. Scanlon, as he was the, or is the chair for the Accountability Committee.
We had talked, I think it was last board meeting in July, I believe, about the superintendent accountability matrix, how we based our goals off of past performance throughout the school district. You know, I guess we've talked about it at length. Originally, I had wanted to encourage the board to determine a pay increase for the superintendent based off of performance, not just an arbitrary percentage that was determined by, you know, whatever, but that we had some data to go behind whatever increase it is determined to use for the superintendent. Does anybody have any questions? I think we've discussed it at length before. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that people still might have. Okay.
Okay.
Hearing
If there's-
none, I
yeah.
mean,
So hearing none, at this time, I would take a motion to approve the superintendent's contract that is before us.
I move to approve the superintendent's contract that is before us.
A motion by Mr. Scanlon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Williams. Is there any conversation about the motion on the table? Mr. Snow.
Obviously, this is up for an action item. We've had this discussion for a while, but reviewing this, I had a tough time trying to support this with that accountability matrix. And this is a conversation, we had a public comment earlier about the politics about suspension rates, but we also had a person in the community that came up and did speak about the high suspension rates of African American students. So this is no history to OPS, and I keep going back that majority of these kids that are affected, I know, come from areas that are in my district, Ms. Williams' district, and as of now, obviously, because that's not in there, and I don't feel that, me personally, that we are doing enough from the top, not in the schools, because the schools are limited, from the top on setting that new trend, that I can't support this.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Underwood.
I just have to ask the question if that issue was raised during discussions earlier, or if that was considered during the review of this.
Mr. Scanlon?
I think if you'll reference the superintendent matrix in the quantitative goals, there's one that's student behavior, decreased percent of students suspended or expelled. So that is being looked at, and it is part of the calculation. Also, you have in the looking at the achievement gap, we have that addressed as well in the matrix. So I disagree. I think that that is being addressed and is being looked at.
Any other comments? Okay. Mrs. Fay.
Now, I don't have anything new to add to this. I've shared already with the committee when this was presented my issues with the accountability matrix and just the concept of it in general. So I am all for supporting whoever this superintendent of the Omaha Public Schools is with appropriate pay increases and including a cost of living increase, and but I have not been supportive of this matrix, and I've shared that. And I'm also have, as I've expressed to the board, have had issues with the clause that allows the board to disregard the formula in the matrix and give the superintendent a raise more than is prescribed in the formula. I don't see the point of the formula if you can disregard the formula. So I feel like it should be one or the other, and I'm personally on the side of not having an accountability matrix. But again, that's nothing new. That's what I've been saying. So a vote against this contract is not a vote against this superintendent or the work that's been done. It's a vote against this type of contract and a response to my constituents who have expressed that they're not in support of it as well.
Mr. Scanlon, did you have another?
Yeah, in response to that, I think that, there is no 100%, perfect way to determine what the superintendent's pay increase should be from year to year, but to lock yourself in to where you can't use our judgment and say, well, this is 100% what we have to do. There might be situations that are beyond the control of this board, beyond the control of the administration, that it is necessary for us to use our best judgment. So I would not say that, locking it in as it's got to be this or it's can't, you can't waver from it or you can't use common sense. I think that would be irresponsible.
Which is why I don't support the matrix at all, for that exact reason.
The matrix at least bases it on something, not just an arbitrary increase, because I believe the last time we gave a 3% increase to the superintendent, cost of living has been flat, probably less than 1%. So that kind of makes us look like we're just giving the taxpayers' money away. At least if I have something that says, well, this is the improvements we've made throughout the district with the superintendent and the administration, that at least makes myself feel more accountable to the taxpayers.
And I know I sit on the accountability committee, but I am in favor of the accountability matrix. I think it allows us to be able to share with constituents exactly what we're focused on for the year and how the superintendent's doing. And I know he's actually had a couple superintendents come up to him and say that they've read about it in the World Herald and now they want to move in the same direction, or their boards want to move in the same direction, which I think is interesting. So I am supportive of this. Any other comments? Okay.
I've got a question.
Okay.
So to Mr. Snow's point, this is just the matrix. We're not putting in the actual performances yet.
We won't know those until, yikes, we've got some kind of feedback going on. We won't know those until October?
But we do-
November. Mr. Schmidt-Bonny is saying November, and so the contract was written so that we will go back and then we will do pay based on that back to July 1, correct?
But we do know the number of expelled students. So would that goal be hit right now or not?
I don't know the answer to that. Mr. Schmidt-Bonny is not acknowledging that. Mr. Schmidt-Bonny, can you at least send us an email and let us know based on, yes, thank you. Take a look at that.
And the reason I bring that up is because I think overall suspension and expels have gone down, but the gap actually increased.
I didn't respond to it, but that was my point there. The data that we looked at, or at least what I've seen, is like over the last 3 years, we've kind of been spinning our wheels. And I understand that we launched these new programs in situations like that. But I remember having a conversation in the board meeting at the board table, and we kind of got in an argument on who is responsible. And then it came to the conclusion that it was whether principals or, but I hold the superintendent accountable for that. And that's that main focus there. And like Ms. Fay said, me voting against this doesn't negate the fact that we've turned this district around, but I feel that that's one pressing issue. Even when we created the strategic plan that the district kind of pushed off a little bit as something to do later with that engagement that I've always been very passionate about. And I feel that we haven't really moved in the direction or at the pace that I would like. And for that, for African American students to represent 25% of those students, but over 50% of the disciplinary rates in there, that is something that I think as a whole the district should take charge in and really try to figure out how we can directly affect and help every student that is affected by that or is in that situation, whether you're looking at a lot of kids that are special needs. We already were sanctioned by the state of Nebraska for that, and I think that is something that we need to pay attention to. I sent an email to, I asked Mr. Ray to separate that data from the suspensions, but I'll leave it at that, I guess.
I would just want to correct that one point. I don't think we were actually sanctioned, were we? We were fined? Did we? Okay.
We were
I just
fined.
want to make sure. Okay, so is there any other points on that? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
America,
Aye.
Scanlon,
Aye.
Snow,
No.
Underwood,
Aye.
Vargas,
Aye.
Wayne, Williams,
Aye.
Fay,
No.
Gadding,
Aye.
7-0.
Motion carries. All right, next we're going to move to J2B, and that is approval of school resource officer and associate school resource officer program agreements. And I understand Mr. Kramer is presenting to us this evening.
I spoke with Mr. Snow before the meeting and said I would just sit back there unless I got called forward, and he said, don't sit back there, just come forward. There are 3 agreements on the agenda for you review this evening related to the School Resource Officer Program. 2 are with the City of Omaha, 1 is with the City of Bellevue. The City of Bellevue deals with Bryan High School. We have 1 other one that hasn't expired yet, that's at Davis Middle School, that's with Douglas County. Let me speak first about the School Resource Officer Program with the City of Omaha, which deals with our middle schools and high schools. Just going to cover 2 major substantive changes to those. The first one is the addition of a canine officer with the dog that will be housed at OPS and will be available for use at the high school and middle school students. So if you looked at the red line versions of what was sent out to you, the bulk of the changes in that agreement deal with responsibilities we have related to the K-9 unit. The second substantive change, which I'll draw your attention to, is item 5.12. Item 5.12 indicates that the SRO will not write tickets for misdemeanor offenses for student under 18 Mr. Wayne, in response to a question you asked earlier, I want to clarify, a juvenile referral or street release may occur for the county attorney to decline or refer to the Juvenile Assessment Center for diversion opportunity with the goal of rehabilitation. So they can still make those referrals, they just can't ticket the students. And that is a substantive change. We were able to run that through the police department and get that agreed to by the city. It mirrors language, if you flip now to the associate SRO program, that same provision has been added to that agreement. No ticketing permitted, they can still do the referrals. The one thing I would note that's going to be a bit of a change for our schools because of the impact of the Affordable Care Act and the associate SROs are generally retired police officers. They, the city will only permit them to work 28 hours per week, so they don't trigger the insurance requirements. And as a result of that fact, you're going to see more than one associate SRO in our elementary school and some middle school buildings where they use the retired officers with that. Last but not least is the City of Bellevue. There are no significant substantive changes to the City of Bellevue's agreement. These are all 3-year agreements which are terminable by the district or by the cities, the respective cities, at the end of each school year with 90 days notice. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Wayne, are you going to bring up the question that you...
I have talked to some people at the county attorney's office, and they're going to review how they can, what procedures they're going to talk about it tomorrow. Let's just say we're going to figure out how that works tomorrow with the juvenile piece. However, I want to praise Mr. Snow, and I know the Omaha World Herald is over there typing away, but this is one of the most significant changes when it comes to the big issues of students going into the juvenile justice system through ticketing. Not allowing SROs or an SROs agreeing not to ticket for every offense will cut down tremendously on the disorderly conducts and things that find their way into the juvenile system. We still may have to work a little bit more with Don Klein's office and the county attorneys, but I want to commend Mr. Snow for getting this done along with staff, with Mr. Snow leading this, because this is one of the first entries into our justice system that plagues many minority children. Once they get in, they cannot get out. But by eliminating this ticketing for minor misdemeanors is a huge step in a direction for the district, and I don't think you'll see the impact immediately, but in the next 4 to 5 years, you'll see a significant reduction in the 211 one time that the World Herald reported of 8th graders and 9th graders being ticketed. So this is a huge step, and I want to commend Mr. Snow for that.
I have a question, and I can't remember exactly, and I know a year ago we had county attorney, correct, here, and there was some discussion regarding state statute changes. So can you just remind me of what that component was to the ticketing? Because I'm trying to remember that, and I'm
Yeah, there was there was a fairly I think it was now Congressman Ashford, then State Senator Ashford's one of his last major pieces of legislation was that he passed in the Nebraska legislature was a fairly comprehensive juvenile justice reform act. As part of that was the concept that has been that's referred to in here, where they make the referrals as opposed to the criminalizing, with an effort to create a comprehensive at the county level interactive system that can intervene before students get too far along into the justice system, and try to keep kids out who may not who, if they don't have contact with the criminal justice system, might keep them from having further contact with the system. And as a result of that fact, you've now seen the creation of this center. I would note that the superintendent, Mr. Ray, And Mrs. Neelis Brash and I are now meeting quarterly with the county attorney to just kind of make sure that these processes are flowing smoothly. We have a much better relationship with that office these days. I think some of the results of this are their willingness, knowing the board's desire to go in this direction, to make a move on some of these things. We were able to get the city to agree to that, and I think that's been a very positive development when coupled with the legislation.
So 5.12 ties into the change in state statute.
It does. What it ultimately, as we know, police officers still have the authority. They exercise an immense amount of discretion, but they basically agreed that for anybody under the age of 18, for a misdemeanor that would have been a ticketable offense, no longer is a ticketable offense. It can still be referred to the county attorney for processing, and they have interaction with social workers and other counselors to try and keep things from escalating again, and that's part of that legislative change, yes.
Okay. Ms. Merica.
Hi. So I was just looking it through, obviously because I represent the Sarpy County part of our district, so I was looking it through the Sarpy County and Bellevue agreement, and I wanted to verify, is that non-ticketing section in there as well?
It is not. That section was not negotiated with Bellevue. That kind of all of that agreement was finalized before it even came to the committee. We can take it back to Bellevue if you'd like to have that in, but Bellevue had not gone down that road.
I mean, personally, I think we shouldn't have one policy that's, essentially a policy that's different for one high school and one middle school just because of where they're located. I don't think that's fair to the students that live in that area that are attending that school. So I really do think that we should go back and get that added into that one as well.
My recommendation to you in that instance would be to amend that one to include the same language that's in 5.12 in the City of Omaha contracts, and then we would take it back to the City of Bellevue amended and approved by this body, and I'm optimistic that we can get them to agree to that.
I think that's very good. We don't have a motion yet, do we? Did we have a motion? Not yet. So when we do the motion, we'll do that. But I think that when we had this discussion, whether it was a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever time, we did talk about trying to be very consistent between the two policies, and I remember that component. So I think that's. So I guess my other question to you is, when is the Douglas County one up? Do you know?
18.
In 18, so it's a ways away. Okay, my other question is, I saw the K-9 piece in the Omaha Police Department
Right.
component. Does that K-9 also get to be used in Bellevue or in at Davis?
No.
No. Okay, so just
No, I would say no.
okay.
Now, I think the issue today is we can call those individual departments and ask for K-9 on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
And I think has occurred over the years. Mr. Rake may be able to confirm that. This just creates, given that between the high schools and the middle schools, the vast majority of them are within the City of Omaha limits, we have a designated one for those schools.
Right, and we're only talking about 3 out of 19?
Yeah.
Or 20, yeah, buildings. So, okay. All right. So at this time, I would.
Mrs. Gutting, Mr. Wayne.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wayne.
Which raises a point for me. I guess I would like, even though we have this contract already, I would like board feedback on directing staff to figure out why, not figure out why, but pursue the idea and the cost of owning our own K-9. Millard has their own. Westside has their own, I believe. They have their own K-9. They have retired K-9s.
And Westside's passed away.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Sorry. And I don't think, does Millard have its own?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't
And so
realize that.
it'll get around the issues of different precincts, but if other school districts have one, I think we should at least look into the cost and have a discussion about about doing that to alleviate some of these problems as we go through different jurisdictions.
Okay, so I know Mr. Evans is over there, but I will ask if everybody's okay with that, ask him to look into what the cost would be and what the expenses are. I know that I've just read a lot of different things, so I want to make sure we cover all the bases on that related to care of that animal after hours. So with that, at this time, I would take motions to approve the school resource officer and associate resource officer program agreements. Ms. Merica, do you want to make the motion and the amendment? Yes, I think so. Yeah, because you'll just make it.
So I guess I would be moving to approve, can I say attachments A through F? Amending item 5.12 from Agreement A into Agreement C.
And that would,
As
in
the
Agreement
appropriate
C,
number.
would be 5.13 in Agreement C, as a new 5.13.
As a new item 5.13.
Did you get that, Mr. Ray? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Ms. Merica and second by Mr. Snow to approve the school resource officer and associate school resource officer program agreements A through F in front of us with amendment to item C having the same 5.12 wording as item A. Is there any other discussion? I was just trying to help you out, Mr. Ray.
Thank you. You
Roll
lost
call.
me when I
I'm
heard
sorry,
the rest. I
Mr.
thought
Wayne.
that-
Again, I would just ask staff to reach out with the county attorney and the city attorney and just discuss before football games start how that gray area is going to work with SROs, or sometimes they're working, sometimes they're around at events and that ticketing issue. So there's just clear kind of procedures from everybody on what they can and can't do, just in those gray areas.
You got that? Okay. Roll call, please.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Williams. Fay.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
8 aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries. All right, with that, we're going to move on to J2C, which is the first reading of policy 1200, which you have seen in front of you before as an information item, and has the wording added, including pregnancy, gender identity, gender expression, veteran status, and political affiliation. Are there any questions on that? So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve policy number 1200 that is before us today.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Underwood. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Vargas. Is there a discussion? So I guess I would just, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and I know I heard comments tonight on this topic. I believe that this policy simply puts into words, and I think Mr. Kramer stated that earlier, what the practice currently is in the district, but affirms that we don't discriminate on gender identity and gender expression, veteran status, political affiliation, pregnancy. So I think the bathroom and locker room is a separate policy that we already discussed, and we've assigned a task to Mr. Evans to work on getting feedback and all kinds of other things on that. So I just want to clarify that for folks who have contacted me. The wording is very, very similar to what's in the university system, and aligns with that. And and simply aligns with what we're already doing in practice in our buildings, I believe. Is there any other comments on that? Ms. Sunderwood?
I just wanted to comment and remind the public that not only is this aligned pretty closely with the university system, but the city of Omaha, and I think this was actually mentioned earlier by one of our speakers, the city of Omaha now includes, just recently, within the last maybe 4 or 5 years, they added sexual orientation and gender identity to their non-discrimination policy. So I just wanted to bring that up. I thought it was important to note, too.
Okay, if there are no other comments, motion by Ms. Underwood and second by Mr. Vargas. Roll call, please.
Snow. Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne. Fay.
Aye.
Gadding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
7 aye.
Motion carries. All right, I guess on there is noted an optional, oh, you're fast at getting those votes on there. An optional motion to waive the second reading of policy 1200. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to policy 1401, community partnership proposal, and 1402, use of grants and donations by individual schools for capital improvements, sorry. And I don't know if there's any discussion on that. I know we've seen this item before. We made the one change on the CFO piece. I know we've talked about it a lot. Staff has spent a lot of time working on this and looking through it. So is there any questions on that? Is there a motion to approve policy 1401 and 1402 that is before us?
Move to approve policy 1401 and 1402.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Mr. Scanlon and second by Ms. Merica. Are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Fay. Gadding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow. 6 aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to waive the second reading of policy 1401 and 1402? Hearing none, we will move on to the first reading of the 5,000 series, and I will call Mr. Ray to the podium because I think we've got quite a few changes there, and it is the, oh yikes. It is the white copies with the yellow highlights at your station. So Mr. Ray, can you just
So
quickly walk us through those?
The yellow highlights show the changes, and I briefly outlined what we changed in each policy based on your feedback on the ones in yellow. They're also marked on the agenda as August 2016 to show that they've been updated. Do you want to go through each one of them? Mr. Scanlon says yes.
Oh, he does.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's just like you, Mr. Scanlon, to hold things up.
I'll read it to you, too, if you'd like.
So there were a number of changes. I know I had a lot of questions. Mr. Ray emailed those out to us, last week?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So,
I do have to highlight that we did separate out 5102 and 5103. So 5102 is specific to athletic eligibility, which the last time you saw it was incorporated into 5103. So that is new, but the other changes are identified on your cover sheet.
okay. All righty, I think that's good. So at this time, and there will, assuming we don't approve the second reading tonight of this, You do have a hard copy for yourself that you can look at, and if you have any concerns about any of those changes, certainly bring them back at the next board meeting, correct? So at this time, is there a motion to approve the first reading of the 5,000 series policies, Part 1?
So moved.
So motion by Mr. Scanlon, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mrs. Underwood. Any comments or concerns about Mr. Ray's changes?
Mr. Reyes.
I'm kidding. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Vargas,
Aye.
Wayne. Goding,
Aye.
America,
Aye.
Scanlon,
Aye.
Underwood.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. All right, next item is J2F Space Saver High Density Mechanical Assist Mobile Storage System, TAC Library Services. I think Mr. Snow pulled that off, but he's not here, so, but I don't know that any of the rest of us had questions, so. So I guess I would entertain a motion at this time to approve that.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Underwood. Okay, so do you know what Mr. Snow's questions were?
I'm not sure. I would identify that it was underneath a national contract, underneath the National Joint Powers Alliance contract, so.
What item are we on?
So, oh, here's Mr. Snow. So we're on your item J2F that you had pulled off. Can you please elaborate for us what your questions are?
This is very interesting. Could you explain the whole concept of this?
So I can talk a little bit about the actual storage itself. Did I hit something? All right. So currently OPS is housing all the choral and instrumental sheet music in 126 5-drawer file cabinets. And that's on the 4th floor and the 5th floor. And there was a structural integrity done on those 2 floors, and it identified that there are issues with that many file cabinets on the structure itself.
Is this the one over in the auditorium?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
the area over
And
the
so
auditorium.
we would be shifting that to the 1st floor so it's safe,
So you're just moving them?
and also putting them in a high-density storage system that would give about a 65% gain in storage space.
So one of the reasons, so I kind of knew you were going to bring this up, but
Sure.
a lot of the things that I would be pulling off is like, how can we get more students involved? Whether we can have service projects or have kids help participate in them.
Sure.
And, how many kids will be affected by it. So, I mean, I don't want to get in the details, but is this something that you're going to pay somebody to do, or is it something that we could do a service project with the students we have?
So a part of this process, and I'm not a part of library services, but one of the things that would be done during this process would be the actual inventory of all of that music. So we could discuss having students help with that, obviously. So yeah, I think a part of this library services was going to start inventory the music all in the library system so that we have check-ins and check-outs, because right now that's still a paper-based system. And so this would be a part of that process.
Dr. Turnquist.
And also, Mr. Snow, you're absolutely correct, and I would defer to Dr. Kerberg on involving the students. The actual installation of the system requires professional services. It's similar to the system that's used in HR for all of their files. But I would think this would be a great opportunity for student involvement in loading it.
Dr. Kerberg, you're in the hot seat.
Sure, we'll explore any way we can involve kids.
I mean, even
and
if
if
it's
they could be involved in some part of it, it's in a more efficient system. It's electronic instead of paper-based. So if there's something they could do to help load data into the system, if that matches their skill set.
I think so. I mean, one of the things that Omaha struggles with is entrepreneurship. So giving kids the opportunities to do some of that stuff instead of just saying it's cheaper paying $50,000 for some movers to just move it for you, having a service learning project, even though it might take a little bit more time and patience, especially the kids that I usually represent, or the kids that are very close, whether that's Central or North, I think you would find some students that would be interested in kind of help move that data and store it that might be more musically inclined.
I'm on the North High Engineering Advisory Team. I can talk to John Van Chattel about that and see if it can be introduced at North High, so.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, just say kids don't like it, I guess, but
But let's explore it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a motion by Mr. Scanlon and a second by Mrs. Underwood. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Wayne? Fay?
Aye.
Goding?
Aye.
America?
Aye.
Scanlon?
Aye.
Snow?
Aye.
Underwood?
Aye.
Vargas?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, with that, we will move on to J2G, Agreement with Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands for Florence Elementary School. Mr. Snow.
So this is mine again. So I remember, was it a year ago? They came and they kind of, this was during our LOI, kind of figuring out where we were. They kind of did like a half presentation. I don't remember them completely finishing it. Do you guys remember that? That they went halfway. So when I looked at this, I was more inclined to try to figure out what program are they going to be putting into the school and how is that going to work. And just again, something I pointed to before is when we allow, I think Ms. Williams brought it up the last previous board meeting about small nonprofits trying to get involved in schools. When we have one organization there, how does that relationship work? Because this isn't a collective for youth site. This is directly Boys and Girls Club. So I was probably more interested for them to explain what they were going to do in this school as pertained to suspensions, or what was their effect going to be in the school.
Well-
And not, it's going to be the same like Mount View, but an actual.
Well, it is a program similar to Mount View's, where the students move seamlessly after school into the Boys and Girls Club facility. I think we had a video the last time when we initially presented it in terms of how that worked in Mount View and the kinds of activities. I can ask our folks to come up and describe for you what the spaces are and how they will be used.
Is
if
there
that's helpful.
is there a way that we can get, and I don't want to get too much into it, but is there a way that we can get, and I know this is something probably more accountability for all nonprofits that get involved in our schools, on what they will hold themselves accountable for, saying that we would hope that we would help the school with, whether it's the disciplinary rates or something like that,
Well,
just so we can kind of
That's the policy we just approved, 1401 and 1402, along with the document that those outside organizations fill out.
But this is according to me, they're building a facility, so it's going to be kind of harder, I think,
Right.
than to kick them. I'm
And
not
I
saying
think,
kick them
I
out,
think
but
1402,
will that address?
1402
An
addresses
organization that is
that. And 1401, help me, Mr. Ray, because we spent a lot of time talking about this. So the 1402 piece takes care of the Capitol facility, and the 1401, and I don't remember, we don't have the, maybe it is, information only, if you go to the first item on 1401, community partner request to provide services, they would be filling that out, correct?
Well, this is an agreement, I mean, we've already entered into this agreement.
Right,
so
and
would
we
be
were-
asking
we
for-
approved
That's what I'm
this at a
saying, like,
separate board meeting.
Going back to how do you add that in? I mean, not trying to, so for an example, like when we did Howard Kennedy, they did a lot of community meetings, a lot of that. I understand we already passed it, but like try to figure out how to make sure that any organization have like I wouldn't say like a protocol that enters kind of like building a facility or adding on to something like that. How do we get that full community buy-in?
Well,
Because
I think-
I remember from this was just something that came in front of the board, and we were okay because it was the same way like Mount View. But did we get community?
Yes, yes.
They had community meetings.
And also from supporting student achievement, they do tutoring programs as well as other activities. But yes, there was community discussion about it. But we first got your permission to move forward with that.
Could I get that data?
What
Or
data?
feedback from the
The-
community, if there were community meetings?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Okay. Help me out, Mr. Ray. Did we have a motion in a second? Okay, we haven't had a motion in a second yet. Is there a motion to approve the agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands for Florence Elementary School?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Scanlon. Any other questions? All right, roll call, please.
Williams.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow.
No.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne. 7-0.
Motion carries. I just remind everybody, as Mr. Scanlon pointed out, the Jacobs 2014 bond program update is attached, item K1. Ms. Williams.
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsel pending litigation, negotiations, and legal advice.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Ms. Williams and second by Ms. Merica. Roll call, please.
Fay.
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Underwood.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
8-0.
Motion carries. Let me remind the board that the purpose for closed session is for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, and legal counsel pending litigation, negotiations, and legal advice. Let the record reflect the board went into closed session at 10:42 p.m.